Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's coffee talk. My name is Sean O'Brien, president of QwickRate, and as always, I'm pleased to be joined by Steve Huntington. Steve, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning again, everyone. Thanks for spending your Friday morning with us again this month. My name is Steve Huntington. I'm the director of analytics here at QwickAnalytics, and I've been spent my entire career working with community financial institutions, and I've been working with Sean and QwickRate here for a little over a decade.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Just a reminder, most of you attended before, but nevertheless, if you want to submit a question, certainly go through the Q&A box or the chat. Steve and I will try to monitor those as best we can throughout the presentation and take them either in the beginning of the presentation or throughout or at the end. So I see a question already came in, so we'll get to that one here in a short order. Again, just a reminder, the coffee talks, we think, and hopefully you found them as well to be helpful, just as we kind of continue to navigate the transition from the ACCL to now the ACL or CECL. And so just want to keep that dialogue open, not only for the changes and the updates that we make to the tools, but for questions or situations or scenarios you might be encountering, and then be able to share that with our broader group of users. As we've done for the most of this year, we're going to ask for your indulgence to do a couple of polling questions again. They'll pop up on the screen. We'll probably give them 30 to 45 seconds, and then we'll move along. But again, curious just to see how everyone's kind of approaching and kind of viewing some of the issues this year. So, back to our inaugural question each month has been, what continues to concern you over the next 12 months? Liquidity, credit quality, security portfolio valuation, or loan demand. I think, certainly most of the year has been dominated by liquidity. And, again, just trying to see if anything's evolving from that point of view. So we'll give this just another 15 or 20 seconds, and then we'll share the results and move on to the next question. Okay, let me go ahead and end this one and share the results. So you can see liquidity is still kind of the most pressing issue. Loan demand coming in the second, and then credit quality next. So again, thank you for participating in that one. The next question is around the loan portfolio concerns. What area of your loan portfolio, apparently I should have maybe put, if any, concerns you the most? So I should have probably put none in here as well, based on the last question. So we'll give this 20 or 30 seconds. All right. Fantastic. Thank you again. Share those results. So, CRE kind of continues to dominate, the most pressing concern, certainly hearing anecdotally, pockets of parts of the country where the concern's a little bit greater than others. But, I think this is certainly something that's going to play out. And again, I think we want to be cognizant of the fact that CECL is designed to be forward-looking, right? So, being sensitive to changes in your portfolio and reflecting those in the reserve is one of the, again, really the hallmarks of the change from the ACCL to the ACL. Okay, let me go back to the next question on past due loans. Have you experienced an increase in your past due loans in the past quarter? So just a simple yes or no on this one. We'll give it 30 seconds or so. All right, a pretty resounding no for most of you, which is great to see. 80% of you have not seen any increase. 20% have. So again, something we'll continue to monitor just as our own internal trend, just to see how things go month to month with all of you. Just a couple more questions. Whoops. Let's see. Did I get my launch button here? Stop sharing that. There we go. Did you increase your reserve in the last quarter? So just again, a simple yes or no. Give this again another 15 or 20 seconds. Okay, let me end this one. I think this is really an encouraging response, right? 55% of you said no, but 45% said yes. And given the answer of the previous question, again, I think we're being sensitive to, even though that maybe past dues haven't shown up yet, we're being cautious with our reserves. So again, I think that's part of what FASB and CECL was really designed to do. So I think that's actually quite a good result. And then the final question here is kind of related. Do you anticipate increasing your reserves to loans before year end? So not only here just kind of taking into account will your reserves go up, but given the fact that your portfolio may grow, just the percentage, will it increase? So we'll give this one just another 15 seconds or so, and then we do have a couple of questions. Steve, should we just take these right here at the top before we get into anything else?
Yeah.
Let me finish the poll, and then we'll jump into.
I don't think we have a good bit of content today on unfunded commitments specifically, and both these questions kind of revolve around that. So might as well just go ahead and take them now.
That sounds good. All right, so I'm going to end this last question. Pretty evenly split. 49% yes, 51% no. So again, thank you all very much for indulging us and participating in the polling questions. I forgot to add, as always, we will be sending out a link to today's recording with a copy of the slides, as well as the results of the survey. So that'll probably come to you on Monday or Tuesday of next week. But it'll have the recording, the poll results, and a copy of our deck today. So again, thank you all very, very much. I don't know if I shared those, but let me just share that.
I was trying to go a whole month without a whole coffee talk without having to talk too much about unfunded commitments. But now everyone's asking the questions, so we'll dig in for just a minute there before we get to some of the other things we've been seeing.
So the first,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So a question came in. We've experienced significant fluctuation with our unfunded commitment liability, mostly due to loans approved and not yet booked. Is this to be expected, or are there ways to avoid this fluctuation? Well, my thoughts on it are this could end up being some bit of an unanticipated consequence from a regulatory standpoint. On the income statement, it shouldn't be making much difference, because if you're thinking about, when a loan is an unfunded commitment that becomes funded, the burden goes from the unfunded commitment liability to your reserve, right? So it stays on the balance sheet, just the other side of the balance sheet. From a provision standpoint on the income statement, I don't believe it should kind of wash out, so to speak. But on the balance sheet, you're right. If you have large amounts that become funded, you're going to be dropping that liability on the for the unfunded commitment on that side, on the liability side of the balance sheet, but having to beef it up on the contra asset account for the loan portfolio. And if you're having a big fluctuation in those total balances, you don't have a kind of regular flow of ones coming into and out of that status, I don't see really any way on the balance sheet to avoid it, right? It's as of a point in time, and has to be calculated and analyzed or updated as of that point in time. Sean?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is two things, depending on how you're dealing with the unfunded commitments, right? The way we've set it up in the CECLSolver, right? I would think you could partially address this by the fact of the percentage of which those that are actually going to fund, right? So you've talked here about approved but not yet booked. So the likelihood is if in the next 12 months, you don't see a large percentage of those actually becoming fuller loans, you can reduce the percentage of those that are actually going to, become loans. And so that's one option. Again, some banks are simply applying a straight basis points to that pool of unfunded commitments. So again, there you might see, a marginal increase depending on, what level you set. But Zach, we're certainly happy if you want, just schedule a call with our team and we can walk through it and talk through your specific situation just to make sure.
I think the trick on that is on the other side where you have almost 100% 100% likelihood of funding that loan. It just hasn't happened yet. So you have a larger unfunded commitment reserve, CECL calculation, right? ACL calculation, because it's going to fund, it just hasn't happened yet. And then that entire amount bounces over to the other side of the balance sheet as soon as it gets funded. And so we're going to have these back and forths between the two sides of the balance sheet if it's a big part of your business and they don't, and the net balance on that unfunded commitments is bouncing a lot from time period to time period.
Great, thanks, Steve. And
Yeah.
Zach, just follow up with us if you'd like to kind of go through
Sure.
your situation. We're happy to do that. So the next question is again related to unfunded commitments. We have a internal audit finding regarding unfunded commitments, wanting to see more granular data on WARM and probability of funding by unfunded category. Will this be addressed in future releases? So again, a couple of things to unpack here. There's not really, there's really no WARM associated with the unfunded commitment because it's not a loan yet, right? So it's really more focused on the probability of funding. The probability of funding, right, is really your personal assessment of what the likelihood of those actually funding is. So you're kind of in complete control that, we set a default to kind of get the conversation started, but that's really within your purview and your loan team's, assessment of what the likelihood of those potentially funding are. So, again, Mike, we can certainly jump on a call and discuss this further, but I think, I'm not sure the granularity that we'd be looking for here.
Yeah, the only information that we have that's publicly available on probability of funding comes from the regulatory CCF, so right, the credit conversion factor calculations that the FDIC uses in their in Schedule RCR, and those have been set by them, and so we sort of piggyback off of those as being a good starting point, since they're coming directly from regulators' expectations or regulator calculations in the past. But beyond that, it's all going to be very unique to your specific, the specific commitments that you have on a one-by-one basis.
Yeah. Okay, so let's again, thank you for the questions. We'll keep monitoring the chat and QA as we move forward. But certainly, again, if you weren't satisfied with Steve's and my response here, certainly circle back with us with our sales team, and we'll jump on a call and kind of dive into it in greater detail. Just a reminder, a lot of these slides here are often just for your ability to have them after the fact, that we just want to kind of keep reminding you of changes that we have made, or you may not have noticed yet or encountered or needed to even think about. But again, we're trying to keep these at a minimum unless there's something again that comes from the group that we feel like we're really will enhance the overall tool. So again, here's just a reminder of a few of those that we've actually done. Steve, anything you want to add here before we?
Yeah, no, really just the focus is on the last two, right? We've just finished our Excel-based auditing validation tool, which we're going to walk you through actually in real time in a moment here. And we have a screenshot on the next slide about some additional notes functionality that came directly from as a result of some of these coffee talks and some conversations we've had with users where there wasn't the ability to add notes on individually assessed loans and held maturity securities pools. We've always had a note function in the, for the loan portfolio summary and for the Q factors, obviously, and for the unfunded commitments. But we've added the user notes functionality to individually assessed loans. So now, instead of maybe having to upload a separate document where you have your notes or your or your explanation for that individually assessed loan, you can add some of that right here into the interactive tool, and it'll save along with your scenario. So nothing too groundbreaking there, but just more places to make notes and follow along for the audit trail, for you remembering what your thought process was last month, last quarter, however you want to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, this was probably just an oversight on our part, not including them from the get-go, but certainly heard from our users, from you, that this would be helpful. So we were glad to get this added here and in the HTM securities. So sliding on next, kind of next up is, we've been kind of continuing to work to give you tools to handle your part of the validation process, right? Again, kind of a dual path. There's the SOC 1 that we prepare as a solution provider, but then there's the work that you may be asked to do to independently validate what the tool's doing. This can often be satisfied. Sometimes, unfortunately, some institutions go the route of having a third party perform that for them, but we wanted to give you a tool that you could independently validate, or someone on your team could validate the tool and the process if you wanted to. So Steve, at great length, put together an Excel tool that we've discussed on the previous coffee talks, but we want to keep reminding you, just because this will certainly become an issue for more banks, because since CECL and the ACL was a 2023 issue, it'll really be, kind of next year in the audit cycle where you might be asked about this. And so we wanted to be prepared and be ahead of this if you wanted, but also there's flexibility if you want to change other information in a more immediate way with your portfolio or loss histories, that this tool can assist with as well. So I'm going to stop now and get out of the way and let Steve kind of talk through his creation here.
This is the screenshot we showed you guys last month. And so instead of just showing it again and talking through the functionality, it's working now, and I'm going to show you guys how it works. So Sean, if I can share my screen here, let's see here.
Yeah, you should be able to share it now, Steve.
Yep. Screen 2. All righty, you seen that?
I can see it, yes.
Excellent. So I'm just gonna kind of pretend that we are all Camden National Bank up in Maine. That's the bank we've chosen to use for today. So this is a file that's going to be available on the website. We can send it to you guys on a one-off basis if you're interested in it right now before we get the link up there. But what'll happen is you'll open up this file and you'll log in to the add-in. So for any of you who aren't familiar with the Excel add-in, you all have access to this add-in tool as part of your subscription to QwickAnalytics. We can show you how to download it and walk you through it if you've never used the add-in tool before. But I'm assuming that you have, or we can get you there. I'm gonna log in here. And when I log in, after opening up this particular file, it says the QwickAnalytics CECL historical model can automatically refresh your data for your institution. Would you like to do it now? Yes. So it's going to take a minute because it's pulling in. This is recreating the entire historical data tab of the CECL tool. So all those columns with all the historical charge-offs, recoveries, balances, net charge-offs, loss rates over time, modifiers, loss, all of it is updating. It's usually quicker than this, but I'm usually not sharing my screen on a Zoom call. So I'm taxing the internet for a moment. There we go. And it says we're ready to go. So here, now what I'm looking at is a perfect exact replica in Excel of what you would see in your, if you opened up a new scenario, started a new CECL scenario, and you went to your historical data tab. So for example, this is in the interactive, the historical analysis tab right here, right? All this data right here with the charge-offs, recoveries, loss rates, all these calculations, which is the big part that you need to be, that you'd be wanting to sort of audit over time. And I'm going to, hold on, I'm trying to drag this back over here now. My screen. Here we go. So now it's here in an Excel environment. So what we have is raw data. This is a starting point. These are all of your call report data points. Nothing has been modified. We haven't calculated a net charge off. We have gross charge offs, gross recoveries on a year-to-date basis. So this is literally a one-for-one exact replica of every data point coming directly from your call report. So that's the starting point for the CECL calculation, right? Balances, charge offs, recoveries. That's what we need. It includes the ability to do anything you want with custom segments as well. So for those of you who have asked us in the past and say, hey, you know, we have some balances that we'd like to subtract, not just from our current balance, but we'd like to get it out of the entire historical record, or we did an acquisition and we want to combine. So there's lots of reasons why you might want to come in here and modify some of your actual historical long-term financial data and have it flow directly through to the CECL tool. So this is a way to do that. But from the raw data, there's intermediate steps, right? We have to take year-to-date charge-offs and recoveries and turn them into quarterly net charge-off values and net charge-off ratios. So this is sort of just intermediate math to get you from raw call report data to our formatted spreadsheet. But right here in this sheet, I can come in, I can change warms just like I would for any scenario. And when I change the warm, everything recalculates. So every single one of these values you can follow from cradle to grave, from the call report values all the way through to what your historical lifetime loss rate is, with no steps missing in the math. If I change a look back period to say 1Q17, so now I have a 4-year warm and I have a 6.5-year look back period, right? So this also furthers that ability to break the link between the warm and the look back. If you want to use a different look back period, it'll show you what that lifetime look back modifier is. So this is, again, a perfect recreation of your entire historical tab of the tool in an Excel environment with every quarterly piece of data linked directly to the formatted sheet. So this should provide you anything you need to completely and thoroughly audit all the financial information that is present in the interactive tool. As you can see, you can imagine why we might not want to have this in the interactive environment, because trying to put this on a web page and scrolling through hundreds of columns and rows is just not something that's really feasible. So this is a great tool for doing that. And you can make these warms match your scenario. So you could open this up, you know, copy and paste your warms from your scenario on the tool into Excel and make the look back periods match as well. And then these numbers will all perfectly match your interactive tool. So that's the scoop, Sean.
Yeah, that's great, Steve. Thank you. So again, Steve's been working hard on this. Again, I think the applications or the use cases for all of you, you know, first and foremost, you know, we had some of you already being asked about, you know, independently validating numbers or, you know, loss calculations. So this gives you the ability to perform that on your own, as Steve indicated, but also the second probably most popular use cases, and maybe third or fourth, you know, typically revolve around maybe your 1 to 4 family portfolio, right? A lot of people might have loans that are, you know, available for sale or held for sale that they want to remove, that are, you know, in a quarter end balance, but want to remove from the ACL calculation. You might have had a historical charge-offs for a loan type or program that you no longer support or offer at your bank. And so you want to better reflect your loss history without that in your historicals. This gives you the ability to customize that. The third case may be that you want to break apart a larger portfolio into multiple portfolios. So this just gives you flexibility if you have the data to better segment your portfolio, should you either want to or feel like you need to. You know, so again, those are some of the immediate use cases that we felt like we could address, you know, with this Excel tool.
So what I just did behind the scenes, as Sean was talking, is I went into the raw data and I just added a custom segment, let's say held for sale mortgage loans that I might want to back out of the rest of the portfolio. As soon as I plugged in, so where you're making your changes are in the raw data, right? You're making your changes in the actual data. And then when you go to the formatted, you'll see Now I have, it automatically adds that additional segment. It calculates the average balances over time. It shows the gross, if you want to expand, shows the gross charge-offs, the gross recoveries, the net charge-offs, which is 100 because I just dragged that value across, and then the net charge-off ratio and a loss rate. So all you have to do is add that. If I wanted to back it out of the rest of the mortgage portfolio, which would make a lot of sense, obviously, I would probably go with equals mortgage lien minus my held for sale loans. And this is just, I'm just doing this temporarily. Well, I probably added too many, more held for sale than total, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But what you would do is, you could just take one minus the other, right? So you don't have to manually type in the difference between the two. So now I've just subtracted out the held for sale. I'm going to hit Control C on this, and I'm just going to paste it right over this, right? Paste the values right over that. So now, and then I can come back here and just delete this guy. So really what I did was, I just subtracted what, $1 billion from their first liens for the held for sale portfolio that I have, backed it out historically just by plugging it in here, doing a little bit of math. And when I go back to the formatted, now I have a fully formatted sheet. Obviously these negatives don't make sense, but fully formatted historical one where the held for sale had been automatically backed out of the first lien. So just one of many examples of how it might be used if you're getting into, if you want to kind of take it to that next level of granularity and detail. Again, whether it's because of a call report change in accounting that you guys had a few years ago, where some loans went from one segment to another, but from a loss ratio, it's not really jiving with your analysis. You can make those adjustments here in the raw data, and it flows right through. And then when you're done here, if you've done a lot of customizations here and you want it to, and obviously you want to build that back into the interactive tool, well, the end result of your historical is what? Your lifetime historical loss rate, right? That's the value, kind of the endpoint of your historical analysis. That's what you modify via Q factors to get your ACL. So you would take these is kind of like the endpoint, take these values and then plug them right into the tool here. So you'd override your, these ones here from your more detailed granular data from the Excel tool. And then you'd be off and running. Everything downstream would work in the tool as it always has. And then if you wanted to, what I would highly suggest you do, if you were to do something like that, go to the File Upload tab and then upload that Excel file and save it here so that you have that attached to the scenario if people are ever wondering why you were modifying some of the historical analysis. Sean?
Great, thanks, Steve. So just a couple of reminders. Steve, again, when will this be available in the Excel tool? Is our guess?
So hopefully by the end of next week, there'll be an actual button somewhere on the CECLSolver, maybe in the resources, or maybe we might put a new button right here just to do that download. But if anybody needs it in the meantime, I can build it and send it. We can send a couple one-off versions of the Excel file because again, it's just a single Excel file that you just update with your bank's name, and then it recreates the default scenario in the historical tab. But hopefully within the next week or so, there'll be a button here so that when you click it, the only thing you have to have is you have to have already downloaded the Excel add-in tool, right? You have to be familiar with the tool.
Yeah, so let's go back to the homepage and just show everybody where that is. So
Sure.
If you've not downloaded the Excel tool in the past, it is part of your QwickAnalytics subscription. It's on the homepage on the lower left. You can see there, right there, you can click on that link and it will ask you to download the add-in tool.
And what happens as soon as you download that, it'll just pop up with a little link. Your IT, depending upon your IT setup at the bank, it might huff and puff a little bit, but it shouldn't. And once it's downloaded, it looks like you'll have a tab in your ribbon, is what Microsoft calls it, right? You have all your tabs up here. You click, there'll be a QwickAnalytics. You click on it, and you have all these choices here. And it'll ask you to log in, and you use the same login as you do for QwickAnalytics online, and then you'll be off and running. Whether you're using it for this particular CECL tool, or whether you're using it for any of the other things that you can use the add-in for. If you'd like a walkthrough of the add-in in general, give us a buzz and we can do that. We also have a quick start guide right here, which is a great PDF file that kind of walks you through how to use the add-in, what to change, how to find data, and I'm probably way too zoomed in here. Ads a little better.
Yeah,
Kind of a visual guide.
Yeah, and then we have an upcoming webinar on our NIM page. The next one in our series will be on the add-in tool. So look for information on that. But then we will go. Steve specifically will go greater into detail how to use the add-in tool, not only for CECL, but then just all the other applications you might consider it as a huge catalyst and efficiency tool to get information.
But the way we've designed this particular file for CECL, we don't expect you to have to come in here and start changing all these columns for all the different periods and for your bank name and everything else. That's why we designed this particular one. So when you download this file and open it up, as soon as you log into QwickAnalytics after opening this file, it'll ask you, hey, would you like us to set this up for your bank with a new scenario? And you just click yes, and it'll recognize who you are. It'll update all this for your bank's information with a default scenario as of June 30th. And we'll be updating this file every couple, either once a year or once a quarter with the new quarterly data, with columns for new quarters, so that when you want to do this, when there's 930 data available, you don't have to come in and do a bunch of modifications to this file to have 930 data. It'll be an option once 930 exists, I guess sometime in the beginning of October or November.
Great, thanks, Steve. Hey, another question.
Sure.
While you're on your screen, we had a question come in regarding where they could find the Excel-based information. I thought there was another one regarding the SOC 1. So again, if you want to just show everybody on the resources tab where the SOC 1 is. So again, in the CECL tool, up in the blue buttons, one of our tools is the CECLSolver resources. And I believe there was a question on where can you locate the SOC 1. It's under this blue button. If you click on it, which Steve will do once it populates. Yeah.
There we go.
Is our SOC 1 right there. So again, you can, this is probably something that most of you will be asked for. So this is kind of step one. Again, think about these parallel paths. There's what the solution provider needs to provide, which is us, SOC 1. Not every bank is asked to perform an independent validation, but if you are, then the CECL tool hopefully helps you avoid having to hire somebody to do some type of evaluation. So again, we can't do everything, but we can't obviously independently validate our own test. So that's why we built the Excel tool for you to be able to do that.
Yep.
All right. So let me. Question, Steve, came in on what's on the intermediate tab of the spreadsheet again.
Yeah. So anything that's not raw call report data, I wanted to make sure that in that Excel file you would find an exact perfect one-to-one match to everything that's on your call report, so you can do the entire audit trail, right? But there are values that are not part of that are in between year-to-date charge-offs and year-to-date recoveries, which are the two values that are on your call report, and the actual data that's shown on the final page. Right, the final page, this is what it looks like. You've got balances, you've got gross charge-offs for the year, gross recoveries for the year, and then net charge-offs and net charge-off ratios for full year values, right? Summary data. The raw data, that's your call report. The intermediate are, okay, net charge-offs is not on your call report. Obviously, it's just A minus B, right? But it's not on the call report. So it's an intermediate calculation where you see, but everything is sourced from the raw data. So when you want to know your June 30th net charge-offs, right? Year-to-date net charge-offs, you take your charge-offs value and you subtract the recoveries value. But then we need to get quarterly data too. We need to not have stuff just on a year-to-date basis. We need discrete quarters worth of data so that we can add them up over a 2.5-year period. We obviously don't want to add duration values on a year-to-date basis, right? Or we'd be double counting each quarter from the previous quarter. So to get a quarterly value, we take the June 30th year to date and subtract the March 31st year to date to get the second quarter discrete value. So that's what we're doing in the intermediate, is just calculating net charge-offs and then net charge-offs on a discrete quarterly basis from the raw year-to-date charge-off and recovery information. Those are intermediate steps from going from the call report to net charge-off ratio, right? So that's what that is.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. There was a question came in, they couldn't see anything on their screen. Again, I think hopefully you can now, but if not, if you have two screens open, that's often the culprit. But hopefully you're able to see everything.
And if you didn't see any of this, it'll be on the when we send you guys the link to the on the recording, you'll see what I've got here. So hopefully that that resolves itself.
Great. You can see it. Good. So the next question came in. Can you use this file to review peer data?
So no, you can't use the file to, this exact file is not set up initially to review peer data, because it would be all of this information for every single bank in your peer group. So it would be a 450 megabyte Excel file if you have a decent sized peer. I mean, it would be completely unwieldy from a size perspective. So if you're looking to audit every single historical quarterly financial data point for every bank in the peer group, it's that doesn't seem like a reasonable expectation for an auditor or someone to ask. However, it can certainly be done using the Excel add-in, right? The data that we have here is data that's in our add-in. You could take this tab and you could make 30 copies of it if you have 30 banks in your peer group, and you could change the RSSD ID to each of your peers individually and literally recreate all the raw data for every single bank in your peer group. It would just be a massive sized spreadsheet, even for me, Sean. And but nothing's impossible. It just but then you'd have to do that for each of the peers, and then you'd have to link that. Then you'd have to do averages and medians. Then you'd have to do calculations based upon each one of those things over time. So it would be a bit of a Herculean task to do so. That's kind of one of the purposes of our interactive tool, is to not have to do any of that work yourselves, but still know that we're doing it correctly, which is why we kind of try providing it for the individual bank. And it's the same exact process, right? The way we do the peer calculations is identical in every way to the way we do it for each individual bank. We're just doing it for every bank in the background and averaging them, and all you're seeing is the average for all the banks in your peer group.
Yeah, and so just to follow up on that, right? So the peer data. I mean, I think, like Steve said, if you're really being pushed or pressed to do some of the peer data, like Steve said, you can use the add-in tool. I would argue to maybe take a small subsection of a peer group, use the add-in tool to recreate some data points to kind of validate it. But
spot check the process. But
yeah, if like Steve said, if we're talking like, peer group 5 has 1,300 banks in it, right? Like, recalculating all this for 1,300 banks is
well, I mean, even in a full-on external loan review, we're taking samples. They're not asking you to provide all the data for every single loan in your portfolio. There have to be assumptions made that the same process is happening throughout the portfolio, and you take a sample. So if you needed to spot check for a peer on a one-off basis, it's something we could try to help you with, but comprehensively doing it on a regular basis seems a bit much.
Yes. So the next question came in regarding controlling access. We're being asked by auditors how we control access to CECLSolver. We have other users that use the credit stress test. You're right, Tim. Right now, you cannot restrict access in our QwickAnalytics tool. I suppose we could certainly consider it. I think my answer to you on why we did not initially was the fact that this was all public information. So our feeling was there was nothing that needed to be restricted, but we can certainly put it on the potential list of updates if this has become something that auditors are asking for. But that's why we didn't do it.
You're talking about a user by user permission based, different permissions for different users at the institution. Yeah. I mean, obviously that would depend on how many users you had and what type of restrictions you're looking for. But I understand the question.
Yeah, so we will
Okay.
take a look at that and see what's involved with it, but certainly suggest it to our IT team and see what we can come up with. So thank you for those.
And it
those
would
questions.
be, it would probably be a blunt instrument where
Yeah.
certain users simply would, when they clicked on CECLSolver, nothing would happen, right? They wouldn't be able to open up the CECLSolver tool at all. Would probably be the way we would manage that, but we could talk to the team and see if there's something we could put together for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Let me take back the screen here, Steve.
Yep.
And okay, so next up, one of the pieces of information that you may or may not have noticed, is just I think with CECL, one of the things that a lot of institutions struggle with is regarding forecasting or just kind of changing support for changing Q factors, et cetera. Right? Our tool's designed to be symmetrical, that we're looking back to essentially project going forward, but we recognize that some of you may want or may be asked to give more information. So one of the things that we did, and again, this can be found on your interactive pages in the credit section, is we showed you the ACL numbers for the banks, the larger banks in the country who had to file CECL earlier. And they're forced to report, while not every loan pool in the same way as the call report, groupings of loans. And one of the things that even the Fed in their scale tool noted was that this could be a starting point for potential reserve levels or just even trends, right? Kind of watching the larger banks who may have more tools at their disposal to kind of better, or at least attempt to better forecast, where things are going. So again, we felt like, hey, this could be informative to you if you're trying to get a sense of, are other banks changing their outlook on where reserves need to be? And so, Steve, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. So as you know, some of the banks over $1 billion in assets have to fill out the disaggregated reserve section of the call report, right? Where they're asking for you to plug in your ACL at the segment level. Now, not, of course, by segment level, I don't mean all the segments that are in Schedule RCC. That would be a little bit too rational. They chose, they came up with, new segmentation, right? These six, so there's only really 6 buckets: construction loans, commercial real estate, residential real estate, C&I type loans, credit card loans, and other consumer loans. Those are the 6 buckets that they've asked larger institutions to disaggregate their reserve numbers so you can see separate trends on reserves for each of those. So that gives us a good idea from an industry standpoint of where reserve levels are headed, with a little bit of granularity, right? With a little bit of segmentation. So you can follow the construction loan reserve trends separately from consumer loans. As a whole, you can see, the June 30th data is in here, and we didn't see any change at all. The total average or median ACL value for all banks over $1 billion in the United States is 1.19% in the first quarter and 1.19% in the second quarter. It had bumped up a little bit, 12/31, it bumped up a few basis points, and at 3/31, as a result of CECL, it bumped up a little bit more. But these are national medians, so it's not a huge bump, right? For any individual bank, probably some very large banks had huge increases in their reserves as a result of CECL. But as a national median, it wasn't that much. But on certain, you can see which segments it does, right? Like consumer loans, other consumer loans went from 134 to 146 in the first quarter. So this just gives you a little bit more detail on following those trends. Sean?
Yeah, exactly. And Steve, if you don't mind, I'm going to give you the screen back. Can you just show again everybody where that can be found?
Absolutely.
Analytics. So again, this is a page that all of you have as well. We want to make sure you know where this can be found. But this is on your bank page. You can go to the allowance for credit losses, and that information will populate that just like you saw in our screenshot. So again, you can change the numbers to quarterly so you can follow it. You can look at them annually, but again, just another piece of, potentially directional information, right? I'm a big believer in directional analysis. So you can see where the national median's headed for, as Steve pointed out, for banks over $1 billion. So
so what we see here, and for most community banks, you'll see a bunch of NAs here, right? Because you guys, most of you do not have to fill out this data on the call report. So you'll have, for your own balances, you'll see a bunch of NAs. But for your peer group, so what we do is if your UBPR peer group is a mix of banks that do and don't have to file this, right? For all the ones that do have to file this information, we'll take those medians. So if you pick a really small peer group of small community banks, you might not get any valid peer data either. But that's why we also show national medians. So we can see your institution, if you're big enough to have to file this, your peer groups, for those of you that do have to. This is UBPR peer group 3. So these guys are big enough to be filing this. So this is a pretty complete data set here. And these are national values. So we can see dollar amounts, right? Allowance, loan balances by these 6 segments, allowance balance by those 6 segments, and then the ratio by those 6 segments. So and then also just a change in reserve. This is where the change in your reserve over a period of time shows up as well. So just another tool. And these are all, again, like every other of these pages, all the charts, the summary charts up top are customizable. So for any of the segments that you see down below, you can change that chart up top to match it. There's no blue bars here. Why? These guys don't have credit card loans, so there's not going to be any bank level data. Credit card. You'll see the peer group average and the national average, or medians. Sorry.
Great, thank you, Steve. Like I said, I just want to make sure.
And I might as well stay here because, well, the next slide is the right here.
Oh, gotcha. The industry research. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it on here and then we'll go back to the slides.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
kind of work backwards. So this is just another, and we've shown this a couple times in the past as well, another tool for that type of research, whether the research is asset quality based or performance based. Let's say, we wanted to look at the ACL, right? And we wanted to add all the banks in Alabama for why not? And then we also wanted to add an individual bank. Let's just use, I really don't mean to pick on Camden National Bank in Maine. They are a fantastic bank. And so there we go. So we've added an institution. I added them twice. I don't know why I did that. They were already there. Sorry. Yeah. So you can add multiple individual institutions. You can add any peer group. So if you want like all the community banks in your state, but then you also want your UBPR peer group kind of, as side by side, and say, I want that peer group as well. So I'm going to add them in. So now we've got your bank's trend in ACL or ALLL before, this year, and all the banks in Alabama and all the banks in your peer group. And I can overlay, I want to, follow the interest rates too. So I'm going to add an economic trend overlay on there. Obviously, we all know what happened with interest rates recently. So you can add all these different peer groups. You can look at it over a long period of time, over a short period of time. And if you want to see all the data, here's all the data that goes along with those data points. And you can always, wherever you are on QwickAnalytics, you're one click away from exporting what you're looking at into Excel or a PDF environment. So this is just a great tool to look at those trends, whether they're ACL, whether you want to dig deep into your revolving 1 to 4 family and look at your 30 to 89 days past due to find emerging trends that you want to see directionally where things are headed way before they get to charge-offs. Well, I just changed it, and now we're looking at all that. We're looking at 1 to 4 family, 30 to 89 days over the last 12 quarters for all those peer groups and for our bank. And if I wanted to go long run, I go, that's 12 years worth. So it's a great visual tool for all those types of analyses.
And just a reminder, we had a question came in, Steve, you already kind of covered it, but we do have the Fred data points, or, some of those that you can overlay what you did with the prime rate. But also then you can create a PDF of all these as well, and see the actual data on a hard copy if you want.
Yep. Unemployment rates by state or national, delinquency rates, GDP growth, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, and if there's additional Fred data points you'd like us to add, we're certainly open.
Yeah, we can add some additional Fred data points. At some point we'll be having a lot of more economic data points in a future rollout of another tool that we're working on. But for now, these are the ones that seem to be the most critical in comparing, kind of overlaying over asset quality type trends.
Great, perfect. All right, let me take back the screen from you.
Yep.
See another question come in. Yes, you can lay more than one Fred data point on the graph.
I don't know if you can actually.
Oh, really? I thought you could. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Try that out. Thought you could put at least two. Maybe not.
Nope.
Nope.
Right now it's
one.
limited to one. That's something we can certainly put on the list. I don't see any, since you can add multiple peer groups and you can add multiple institutions, I don't see why there should be an artificial limitation on one particular economic trend. I'll check with our IT guys though to make sure that I'm not talking out of turn, that there's not a good reason for that. And if there isn't, then we'll remove that restriction.
Yeah, good question, John. And thanks for joining us today. So here again, as Steve touched on, is a slide just kind of, recapping the ACL trend tab, or the research industry trend tab. So again, if you haven't looked at that, take a peek. All right, so just a reminder as we get closer here to another quarter end, I think this quarter we began to see and hear from a number of our banks that they were starting to see extensions or lengthening WARM for different loan pools. And so we just wanted to kind of talk through again our WARM calculator tool, just because there is some flexibility as we've discussed before on these. The original design was to be very conservative with the WARM, which leads you to a much longer WARM. We recognize that everybody's philosophy around the reserve is different, so we wanted to provide some flexibility for you to find the WARM that is most in sync philosophically and anecdotally with what you think is happening in your portfolio. So we just wanted to kind of give a refresher on the tool that's available to you, and Steve's going to talk through how you can consider different applications.
And so we've been seeing some increases in WARMs. All things being, when does that happen? Well, that happens when one of your assumptions, even if your portfolio isn't changing at all, if loans are coming on and off the books at a consistent rate, you'd expect that your WARM should pretty much stay consistent on an ongoing basis, except for the assumptions that are outside of that. What are those assumptions? Are prepayment rates. And in a unique environment like we're in now, where we had low, consistent interest rates for an extremely extended period of time that have just recently started to significantly increase, we are now suddenly in a historically low prepayment environment, right? As opposed to 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, when I think the average prepayment rate on mortgage loans was above 30% nationally, meaning 30% of all mortgage loans were prepaying every single year on average for all the banks in the entire country, which is historically extremely high, obviously. That number now is more like 10% or less, 10 or 8 or 7%. A significantly smaller or slower repayment assumption is going to lead to a longer estimated average life for your portfolio, right? And that's going to, all things being equal, result in a higher reserve level. So I think we'll see when in these types of interest rate environments, higher reserves just because of lower prepayments and longer duration portfolios. You're keeping the loans on the books for longer period of time where you might have some issues with losses. That's what the name of the game is. So
And let me just jump in there, Steve. The other thing is for many of you, some of you, particularly maybe your commercial borrowers, they might be asking for longer amortizations, right? With the increase of, when the renewal comes up, higher interest rate, impacts their cash flow. They might be asking for longer amortization terms, which again is going to lengthen, those warm periods. And so for all of those reasons, we're just starting to hear more conversations and have more conversations around this. So we wanted to, kind of refresh.
Yeah, I mean, people are seeing calculations in our tool and even institutions that don't use our tool. Our reserve is going up. We're doing nothing wrong. We're not seeing any more losses. We haven't grown the portfolio. Why is that happening? Well, because these are the assumptions that are sort of built into the way that CECL requires us to look at potential losses over the remaining lives of the assets. So in our Excel tool, we provide a bunch of different options or calculations for, a raw unadjusted warm calculation, which is going to be extremely conservative. It doesn't take into account prepayments, amortization, or anything. I don't think anyone should probably be using that as your warm value because it is overly conservative. Then we adjust for prepayments and we get the warm value comes down some. Then we adjust for amortization and the warm value comes down some more. And so we show kind of each step of the way so that you can tweak your assumptions as you go. And if you need to make a change to a prepayment rate or an amortization assumption, you can do that and kind of use this tool to manage how that's changing over time. So if you're using our warm estimator tool, you're saving that file each quarter, right? And you're updating it with as often as you feel like you need to, which is probably on a quarterly basis, maybe semi-annually for some of you smaller institutions that don't have much movement. But at least looking at those prepayment rates quarterly, even if you're not recalculating, your loan data, you should be coming in and double checking the assumptions for things like prepayments as the interest rate environment continues to play out. Do I have a second slide on this? I do.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I do. I just, I will say, this is why we have the standard and enhanced, because everybody's philosophy around the reserve is different. And so in a small group of two, Steve and I have different views on it. For the bank where I'm a director, I want the more conservative warm. So we prefer the standard one because we want the most conservative approach. And so again, I think that's what we were really trying to address, is the fundamental approach of reserves for every bank is different, and we wanted to make sure you could dial into what best reflects what you're trying to accomplish. So
yeah, and so that it's really about the dialogue that you have, your philosophy about reserves from a conservative or an aggressive basis, and the buy-in from your examiners and your auditors as to what that philosophy is and where you are on that spectrum, because it's subjective and it's a spectrum. This second slide just shows we wanted to give all the data that was available out there in the ether of the internet and regulatory guidance. And the best data that we can get guidance wise for prepayment rates and warms actually from the industry comes surprisingly from the NCUA. The FDIC hasn't stepped in and provided any kind of segment level guidance or information about prepayment rates they're seeing around the country, or warms that adjusted warms that they're seeing at the segment level. But the NCUA actually does a quarterly study where they hire a third party that goes out, gets loan level data from credit unions all over the country, smaller credit unions all over the country, and then actually calculates prepayment rates by segment. They're credit union segments, but they're not that different from commercial bank segments, especially now that credit unions are getting more into doing commercial loans, as we all know, and warm values. So while yes, this is credit union data that we're showing on this page, and we're shifting it to fit into the bank segments on your call reports and your bank call reports. The general information about prepayments and warms for a mortgage loan from a credit union can probably be relatively similar to a typical community bank. So we didn't want to withhold that information, whether you feel it's relevant or not. up to you, but it's the best data that we have available. So we wanted to present it to you guys so you can at least compare. Hey, my warms, I'm coming up with a 12-year warm on this segment, and looking at this guidance, that seems like that's like more than twice what a lot of the other smaller institutions around the country are seeing. That's just a flag, right? Something to look in deeper, make sure that you're taking into account what you want to be taking into account on that warm calculation, or if your prepayment assumption is wildly differing from these industry, I wouldn't call them norms, but significant industry data. Why is that? And if that's on purpose, so be it. But it could also help refine your process to have some of that data. So that's why we update this every single quarter, because that data is updated by them on a quarterly basis. John?
Yeah, and so again, I know this has offended some of our banks, right? But as Steve said, we felt like it was our responsibility to give you as much information. It's your choice whether to use it or not. Certainly, some of you, maybe through your ALM provider, have information around your own prepayment speeds. But again, I think our job as a solution provider is to try to share with you all the information that we can, and that's what we attempt to do. It's your decision whether you find it useful or applicable, and that's everybody's individual determination to make.
Yep.
All right, so just a few additional updates. As we touched on last quarter or last month, we built this new NIM decomposition page that just kind of tears apart your NIM. I think this is a wonderful tool that Steve designed. We will be doing a webinar on this, but Steve, you just want to just maybe give a few minutes here. I know we're already at an hour, but just on this.
I grew up in New York, John. I can double my pace if you need me to. Now this is a type of analysis you see much more frequently on SEC filing larger institutions, right? That file 10Qs and 10Ks. They have sensitivity analysis, and they look at net interest margin decompositions like this, where you see your numerator, your denominator, and your yield cost on a quarterly basis or a year-to-date basis or an annual basis. And you can compare this quarter to the linked quarter from 1 quarter ago or 5 quarters ago, or this full year to last full year. And it not only shows the ratios and the calculations, but also the change in yield that came from rate or that came from volume. And we share the math behind that. If you want it, we can certainly go over it. And then also a really cool, unique calculation called change in margin contribution. So that gives you an idea of this, a column all the way on the right, that because you had a significant increase in this securities type or this loan type, and the yield maybe declined significantly on that one, it actually contributed to your margin in a negative way to the tune of 3 basis points or 2 basis points. So and there's a footnote there that explains exactly how that calculation is done. It's something that the regulators actually came up with. Some researchers at the FDIC use that margin contribution or change in margin contribution calculation. Next slide real quick. So in addition to just comparing your NIM this quarter to your NIM, last year, we also wanted to show everything on compared to peers, right? So there's 2 different pages here. First one is just comparing you to you at a different point in time, right? In a detailed manner for your ALCO committee. This is comparing you at any point in time to your peer group. So using that kind of heat map analysis visually that we've used in the past, where we show, hey, here's your yield on interest-bearing deposits, due from other institutions. 3.89%. It's a little bit below, the average or the median. So it's in the orange zone. So we give you kind of a visual representation of all your different yields and costs compared to your peer group. So you change the peer group and you'll see where you are on that spectrum in those percentile ranks change. And you can toggle between seeing your ratio and seeing your actual percentile ranks. So I know that's not a dynamic page there, but that blue button up top, if you change it to nominal PCT ranks, instead of your 5.63% yield on C&I loans, it would say you're in the 23rd percentile compared to your peer group for that yield. So it's hopefully a great visual page there where you can see where you're at on a pretty detailed basis from a yield and cost perspective. John.
Fantastic. Yeah. Again, we're gonna do a more in-depth webinar on this. And we'll talk about that in a second, but then
And this is new. I just want to take one second. This is really exciting. We've had people asking about this forever, and it was not an easy thing to really implement, but and it's not live yet, but it's going to be rolling out bit by bit over the next few weeks. The ability to, on any of our interactive pages, when you hover over any line item, you'll get a little blue, I don't know if you can circle that or highlight it on your screen there, Sean, a little blue eye, right where the on the left there, the non-interest expense core to average assets. So that's kind of a tricky calculation. People have asked, well, what do you mean when you say core non-interest expense? So the line item on the left there, all the way on the left, Sean, has a little blue eye. So if you hover over that, if you're on the interactive and you hover over this line item, you'll see a blue eye. If you click on that, you get this pop-up window that shows exactly how we do that calculation, the numerator, the denominator, all the math, and then any explanatory notes, like the denominator is an average balance over the period, and core non-interest expense excludes non-core things such as amortization and impairment related charges. So this is something we're rolling out to all of our interactive pages. And so you'll be able to audit and see the calculations and formulas and notes about every single line item on the entire platform.
Yeah, we're, like Steve said, this is probably, again, a little bit overdue. It has been quite a project, but again, I think we want this to be as self-contained, and they give you the ability to do and kind of research things your own. And so this just will give you the information of where everything's coming from. So again, probably long overdue, but
and we wanted to do it in a clean way. I mean, we're all, by the way, we'll also provide, if you want, a gigantic tome of the data dictionary of all the line items and what their calculations are. But instead of here's a 400-page PDF, we wanted a practical way where when you're looking at a ratio and you want to see how it's calculated, you can just hover over it, click on it, and you get a pop-up window with that calculation. So it was really the details of how to manage that, especially given that we have different filer types, right? We have 051s and 041s and 031s, and those filing types have changed over time. So that's the intricacies of doing something like this and having it be accurate. And if the formula changed over time, there was a formula maybe 5 years ago, it was a different call report line item than it is now. And so all these things play into how we would want to display this here. But over the next few weeks, you'll start seeing a bunch of blue eyes next to line items, and you'll be able to track that without having to call us and ask us to do it for you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so we're excited about that. Again, thanks for all the, I should erase those.
That's all right, Sean.
My annotations are staying with me. Again, question came in, the slides and the results and link to the recording will likely be into you in an email either late Monday afternoon or early Tuesday morning. So again, thank you for your patience on that. I'm just going to leave those marks there. Kind of funny to me now. Upcoming webinars, as we mentioned, August 30th, we will have a broader discussion around the new NIM tool. September 6th, our IntelliCredit team will be having a webinar talking about today's loan review with given today's credit risk. So please register for both of those. Again, even if you register and you can't attend, you will get a copy or a link to the recording and the slides. So, always certainly valuable to register. I'm chuckling to myself leaving that on there. If you missed our webinar with Zane Smith from American Bank, he is a IntelliCredit customer. If you're looking for that next level of loan level detail, he spoke how he uses our portfolio analyzer tool. We're really excited about that tool. We're going to have future webinars further discussing that and the applications that it can mean for you. But there is a recording from the with the webinar with Zane from a couple of weeks ago. So I'd encourage you to watch that if you haven't. And then finally, we will be back in September for Coffee Talk. But then in October, our dear friend Paul Allen will be joining us again. So just a reminder on a couple of upcoming Coffee Talks that will be available. So, all right, I'm gonna get the eraser out. I gotta, it's now it's actually starting to bother me. All right, there we go. Again, thank you all very much for taking time out of your day to start your Friday with us. I hope you found the information helpful. Steve, any final comments before we let everybody get back to their day?
Nope. Nope, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thank you all very much for attending. Again, register for our upcoming webinars. If anybody earlier in the presentation questions specifically about those unfunded commitments, circle back with our sales team. We hope you have a great day and a great weekend. And thanks again for joining in. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
everybody.
Thank you.